It's almost wrong for you.
Yeah, so fucking hurry
tell
up.
that.
Good, mate.
Cool.
It's got shit for.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? So we'll, yes. Hopefully a few bits and pieces that you guys can, golden nuggets that you can take away for the youth population. So we're going to go over just some myth busting at the beginning, like the importance of training for youth. We'll go over PHV and PWV, and I'll explain what this. Common injuries, adolescent awkwardness, training adaptations, and so on. So, again, we have a moral and ethical right to provide a safe and positive environment for kids to experience training. Okay, a lot of these kids, it's going to be the first time they encounter training instead of PE. And PE, a lot of times, PE doesn't do a great job at providing kids with a positive first impression into training. The implications are, if their first impressions are not good, that person's life trajectory could be completely different and they won't engage in physical activity again. If they have a positive experience, it can be completely different and they're going to be healthy and active for the rest of their lives. Okay? And so our job is actually really, really important, even though sometimes we might not even realise it. So, in terms of, this is more in terms of like exercise and lifting weights, etc. So in terms of weightlifting, some myths. Damage to bone plates. A lot of people used to think that weightlifting through youth and as they grow in would create damage. That's not necessarily true. Stunted growth, that's not true also. Some people use the case of like gymnasts. If you see them, they're all quite small because they think it's because they start lifting early. That's also the reason playing basketball makes you tall. Is it that they're actually more suited towards that sport because they're not very tall, so the professionals make it biomechanically they're more suited, just like tall people are more suited to playing basketball. There's no benefit, they say there's no benefit due to lack of circulating androgen hormones. Well, actually there's other benefits and we'll go over it. And no greater benefit to health and performance in adult life, and we'll also bust this myth as well. Quite a busy slide, but I'll go over it. Once you understand it, it's actually quite simple. So how young is too young to start training? So you've got infancy, pre-adolescence, pubertal onset, adolescence and adulthood, so the development stages. And strength and conditioning activities initiated during pre-adolescence. So if you start training S&C here, this is your performance, so neuromuscular performance, by the time you get to pubertal onset, adolescence and adulthood. Okay, so like we said, if we can get kids engaging in this sort of thing early, they're going to become better earlier, and therefore they're likely to continue to be in sport later on in adulthood, because you don't want to do anything that you're not very good at. If you're good at it, you're more likely to do it. If they do strength and conditioning activities initiated during adolescence, that's not too bad either, but ideally we want to start them earlier. And if they just play sports without the weightlifting, this is kind of their progression. And then no strength conditioning or sport, this is kind of their progression, okay, based on the research. So resistance training, dynamic stability exercises, core focus training, plyometric drills and agility play a massive role in terms of getting our youth to be more successful in sport. And this relates to just general health and being engaged in sport, but also sports performance. If we want people to be good, you know, I see like you've got loads of kids that are just doing sport and they're not actually doing any strength and conditioning activities early on. If they started at the age of 7, 8, 9 and 10 learning these things, obviously needs to be age appropriate, they're likely to be way better off later on. So, peak height velocity. This is one of the most important concepts for us to understand when we're training youth. So basically, this is the point at which the adolescent experiences their greatest rate of vertical growth, basically going through puberty and the growth spurt. This accelerated growth coincides with the onset of puberty, as I said. Girls typically mature earlier than boys, so roughly 2 years earlier, at the age of 12, and boys, it occurs more at the age of 14, as we can see here. So, yeah, so accelerated growth, girls here, and then boys here. And it's roughly about, for boys, I think it's about right 9 centimeters. I'm not too sure. I'm not going to say numbers. I'm not too sure. I do think it's 9 kilos, 14 kilos. That's great. Then you've got early versus late developers. Why do we care about whether someone's an early or a late developer? Well, in our context, it might be that little Johnny's mum thinks Johnny is not very suitable for boxing because he is too small and he's not going to make it because he's not going to be very physical. Well, he might just be, and his peers are bigger, and he's not doing very well in comparison to his peers. Well, actually, he might just be a late maturer. You know, we've all had friends, I remember through high school, who all of a sudden shot up, and now we see them and they're like the same height as us, or like by the end of high school, they're the same height. It's just late developers. We've also got early maturers as well. Just because someone is good quick and develops earlier doesn't mean that they're going to be better than everyone else. Okay, they just matured earlier than everyone else. So that's something important for us to realise as well. In like a sporting context, more in like football and things of that nature, that plays more of a role. In boxing, potentially not so much, but it's important to understand also. So, why is this period so important? Well, because of this accelerated growth, there are injuries that occur during this period. We need to be aware of what those injuries are if we train in this population, and we need to be aware of the implications of doing the wrong stuff with them at this age as well, which could have a negative effect. So typically the injuries occur distal to proximal. So what that means is, for example, you might start to see the feet grow first before then the rest of the growth occurs throughout the body. Okay, so you start to grow further away, so it would be the hands and the upper body, and then you grow through the rest, if that makes sense. So then injuries occur at a different rate. I think I have, if we look at the osculus and Seaver's disease. Seaver's is at the Achilles, it's at the ankle complex, and then osculus is the knee. If we can see here the age groups where it occurs, so that's more ankle, more ankle as they're younger, and then it becomes more knee, and almost no ankle in terms of number of incidents. Why? Because the youngest, you get the accelerated growth away from the body first, so you're going to see the most injuries down here. And then as you get through these sort of ages, you might see more injuries at the knee. So getting kids skipping for ages is potentially not the best idea, okay, if they're within this age period. Why? Because you're just putting more repeated stress through that area. Same as the knee. How might we influence that? Let me just see if slightly coming in. Oh, I skipped one. That's right. My bad. So these are the common injuries. So severs, osculus, whatever that's called, and that one also. So this is what they are essentially. Okay. Again, and we need to kind of understand what aggravates these injuries as well. Question. How might we, just throw it out, how might we kind of help with these sort of injuries? Or what might we do, what might we not do?
Don't do certain exercises that would aggravate it.
Yeah, what would those be, potentially?
Skipping.
Yeah, jumping exercises.
Yeah, so high impact activities. Not saying don't do it. I mean, if they show signs of the injury, then you'd avoid that. what might you want to do to help with these injuries?
Recovery. Prehab.
Yeah,
Or
potentially.
like building up around it so it doesn't.
Strength around it.
Yeah.
You can work.
This is what we do.
No, kind of. As in, what do we think?
Footwear, things like that.
Appropriate footwear would definitely be one. So, like, you could get them to skip in the ring as opposed to skipping on hard floor. So that's one strategy. Would you get them to stretch? Tricky one. But if, say, a kid goes, okay, they're experiencing growth pains, so there's reduced flexibility because obviously the bone's growing. So then you're lengthening through the muscle. Would you stretch?
Yes.
I can't fret. You can be wrong, that's
Yeah,
fine. You can be
yeah.
wrong or right.
I'll probably say stretch.
Okay, no.
No?
The reason you wouldn't stretch, I mean, each case is different, but generally, globally, you wouldn't stretch because, think about it, if the bone is growing, and then it causes tightness because the muscle can't keep up, right? When you then go to stretch it, you're going to probably induce even more stress.
So would you have to do things that shorten the muscle?
You could implement some acute adaptations to increase flexibility that doesn't involve stretching.
Yeah.
So foam rolling, for example, or myofascial release would help with that, just to release a little bit of tension as opposed to trying to stretch the area. And then you would probably also look at the stabilizers of those areas, and a lot of the times you would look to strengthen the antagonists or the areas that are kind of getting the less work, usually compensating. So for example, with the knee, if the quads, typically the quads get tight, they pull. So you'd probably foam roll the quads, but maybe potentially strengthen the posterior chain a little bit more, but you have to go on a case-by-case basis. This is where you then, I'm not telling you to deal with injuries, because there's people for that. What I'm telling you is, okay, what shouldn't you do? Okay, don't stretch, that's a quick fix. You wouldn't get them to stretch, maybe foam roll. It's just a quick fix that you can just deal with in the session and send them to the right people.
Is that if they've got pain?
Yeah, well, if they've got pain, just stop.
Yeah.
But if we know someone's mum comes and says, oh, they've been diagnosed with this sort of injury,
Right, okay.
you can kind of go, oh, okay, cool, thanks for letting us know how we might then help them within the session.
Do we need to get Bobby to buy like 15 foam rollers?
Get them to buy their own. That's
Yeah.
what I do.
That saves you.
Let me buy plates over.
Yeah.
Just buy these plates.
Yeah.
I'm like, do the PT room, give me a break.
Yeah.
You could you could use a tennis ball,
Yeah.
but obviously make sure the kids know
Hand
how to
down
foam
there,
roll first.
do a fist down there.
Yeah.
None of this.
And
Sorry,
also tell them not to foam roll behind the knee. That's really important. Okay, adolescent awkwardness. So this occurs not with everyone that goes through a growth spurt, but with some of them, where you'll find that actually, because they're growing so rapidly, all of a sudden they become more uncoordinated, and they feel like, as a coach, you might think, "Well, you were good 3 months ago. What's happening? Like, is your brain? Have you switched off? Like, what's going on with this kid? Am I not doing a good job?" Football clubs used to drop kids from their academies before they kind of started to measure the peak height velocity. Now it's all measured, and they do it all. And I'm in the process of starting to measure that with the swimmers as well, so that we know and we can feed back to the swim coaches and the parents, which is really important. You might find that they're not performing as well. So what you might do is then regress the type of activities that they're doing. Maybe you have to go over fundamentals again, just to integrate the patterns, as opposed to kind of like thinking, little Johnny is an idiot because he's probably not been listening. Maybe he just needs a little bit of support. And psychologically, how might that impact the kid that actually was quite good and all of a sudden things are no longer happening for him or her.
I was going to say, does that change your pathways then, like your neural pathways? Because obviously, say if someone's really good at football and then they start getting like a lot taller, surely that's going to change everything then.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Their proprioception and their spatial awareness is all going to change. It's all going to be off whack. So the brain is kind of have to go through that neuroplasticity again. to be able to adapt. And it may increase the risk of injury as well if they're not. This is why I hate when I see this sort of thing like football team. Like if you go to your local football team and you see all these, okay, let's jump over this ladder and then run over there and then jump over this ladder and just do all this random stuff with no real like objective. Not even teaching the kids how to land correctly before they're getting them to jump. And all of those things. Like I think a lot of times we're running before we can even walk, and it should be opposite. Teach them movement literacy, how to move, how do you lunge, how do you squat properly, then put them into those environments. It's kind of backwards at the moment, but. So let's look at the training adaptation. So if you take a kid and you start training them, even body weight, movements, etc. What happens? So pre-PHV, it's mostly neural. So you get increased motor unit activation, intermuscular and intramuscular coordination. Drives me absolutely nuts when I see trainers getting a youth to do a five rep with a half heavy weight. But even like, there's no reason to go below 12 reps with anyone below a training age of 2 years, even if they're an adult, to be honest, because most of their adaptations are going to be into an intramuscular coordination. 2 years is a bit harsh. Maybe a few months into it, you wouldn't. With kids, it's the same. You wouldn't. Before they've trained for a while, you wouldn't get them to do any less than 12 reps. Okay. Integrate the patterns. Make sure it's good. Add some load. Make sure it's good. 12 to 15 reps. I mean, you can go 10-8 reps. I mean, some people do 10-8. I mean, I would argue actually, this is my opinion. If the adaptations are mainly these ones, let's get them doing more of the movement and integrating that into them as opposed to doing less reps. But then you have to account for volume. And then post PHV, once they go through that growth spurt, hormones start to kick in, and the adaptations are now morphological. So there's increased testosterone, fighter type orientation might change. Increase cross-sectional area, so they're going to add muscle. Resting ATP levels, and then changes in muscle tendon architecture as well, so tendon structures as well, which will change. So you can start to then shift your training a little bit according to the adaptations. And you'll see that boys will get strong relatively quickly, girls will too, but I'll go over that in a second. Stages of long-term athletic development. So the active start, 0 to 6, fundamental movement skills. We should be just getting them to move well, properly. And then the fundamentals is 6 to 9, same again. And then learning to train. Again, all here we focus on movement literacy. Making sure that they can do I'll skip a few slides to show you. They can do all of these things. So here, the locomotor, so walking, running, hopping, skipping, all of those things. The stability and the manipulative fundamental movement skills, and then also these ones in terms of the athletic motor skills competencies. Can they squat, hinge, push, pull, vertically and horizontally, lunge, rotate, brace, resist rotation, press, and all those things. So again, just teaching that and kind of having some sort of idea on how to progress and regress movements as well. Kind of like, okay, would you start with reverse lunge or forward lunge, lateral lunge? How would you progress different movements? Which is also quite important to be aware of. This is the youth physical development model for females and males. I'm struggling here. So, this looks busy. It's actually quite simple when you look at it. The bigger the word in terms of the writing, the bigger the priority in terms of what you're going to train at each stage. So you've got chronological age here, which doesn't mean a lot, it means a bit, but actually their biological age is actually more important. Age period, so early childhood, middle childhood, adolescence and adulthood. And then the growth rate across here, maturation status, pre-PHP, PHP when they're going through the growth and then post. So again, it's all going to be functional movement skills primarily. You might focus on agility, speed, power and strength through these phases, more so in these phases as well. And hypertrophy is going to be a priority through here. You might start to dive into strength and power from the age of sort of 16, 15 onwards, depending on how much they've matured. If they're an early mature, you will, because their adaptations are going to be different. So they're more morphological, so you can start to load them a little bit more. They'll be stronger. And the boys are just a little bit different, slightly further up. So this is probably the most important thing we need to be aware of for girls. Give me a second.
Get out, son. Get out.
So you see a lot of ACL injuries with the girls. So if you get them jumping around and doing bits and pieces, that's potentially a risk factor. I guess for us, it's kind of like, okay, what are the best exercises for us to give the girls to do? If we know there's some that are really good for them, and some that are not so good for them, so obviously if we're going to give them exercise, let's give them the ones that they can actually benefit from. And we can talk about this, if not it's going to be long, but that's like kind of another topic. This is something that we can go over as we progress. I'm happy to share with you
Monthly meetings.
what I think would be probably the best things to do. But having an awareness of that is important. And then I think key difference between PHV and WV, this is peak weight velocity. So you grow first, and then you add weight, okay, and size. So there's the height, peak height velocity, and peak weight velocity comes after, roughly 6 months after. For girls, if you're working with girls, this is going to be more fat mass. Boys are going to be more muscle. So this could have actually a psychological effect on females, and this is something that I speak to the girls I train a lot about in regards to actually, it's normal, their performance might decrease a little bit, their power output might decrease a little bit. I had girls who were able to do 10, 15 push-ups, and then they go through the growth spurt and they struggle to do 4, and they're kind of like, oh, I haven't changed my training, what's going on? You just put God knows how many kilos on. Yeah. Obviously, it's going to be a lot harder because you've got more weight to push. Psychologically, that might affect them. I give examples in swimming. Their times might actually drop, so they're not doing as well. So again, we need to even inform. Like some people, some girls don't know this is the natural process. Some parents, obviously, you notice that they're growing, but they don't know this is the natural process. So it's kind of like, oh, they're slowing down. They're getting older, but they're slowing down, or they're not getting as good. Well, this is probably why. And that's the conversation we need to have. That's the role of the coach, is to then inform and give their opinion on it, and then provide certain training strategies to mitigate that. Yeah, we'll leave it there for that bit.
Wait, going back,
yeah.
On the graphs and the table,
yeah.
What does FMS stand for?
Functional movement skills.
Yeah, what's the SSS?
I think
sport specific.
Yeah.
Skills.
Sport skills, yeah.
Right.
Also, in terms of sport specialisation, we should encourage kids to play as many sports as possible early on.
Yeah.
To get that movement literacy. You shouldn't really get them to specialise too early. Yeah? So get them to play lots of sports and then later specialise. Just some guidelines. For resistance training. Again, this is kind of, I can send this to you, I'm not going to go over it all, but it kind of gives you an idea of kind of the things you should be doing. For each person, and regardless of the age. But okay, methods and content. The sessions need to be fun. That's the number one thing. Okay, like what's going to make a good youth session? Okay, understanding all these things, but then being able to make it fun for the kids. How you make it fun is then up to the coach. How you then implement all of these things in a fun environment is then up to you. Something I've used a lot was animals. I think we've got up to 21 animals. And the kids that I coach, the ones that they're from like the age of, some of them are like 8, 9, 10, and they're able to, if they come through the door, they're all able to do 21 animals without me helping them at the moment. So that's quite a good stage to be at. And that's the magic of lockdown. That put us forward quite a lot in terms of S&C. But you know the mobilizers you do. You got scorpion, you got scorpion. I mean, you might recognize some of these that we do here. Crab, scorpion, cat camels, seal snails, hedgehogs, pigeons, all sorts. So it makes it more fun for them to actually learn these movements. I'm not saying do a squat. For the functional movements I've got here, so I've got superheroes, and I've got like different levels for the superheroes for them. So like, this is Aquaman. Aquaman's teaching the hinge, so they start here. Quick example, they start here, and I'm teaching them how to maintain a neutral spine in the hinge position. Okay, that's like the first one they learn. Then I take them into here, and I teach them how to do Aquaman level 2. Aquaman level 3 might be split stance. Aquaman level 4 is then into here, because then he's getting ready to dive. And then Aquaman, and so on, and then it might be a single leg hinge. And each kid will develop at their own kind of rate. But you have a method and a way of getting that across to them. Don't just, okay, you're doing squats now. Cool, you're going to do lunge now. They won't come back.
Did you come up with that?
The animals, I just kind of came up with my own ones. Superheroes is I came up with my own ones, but it was taken from a different concept from like Child to Champion. It's like a concept that I think Simon Brundish developed, and then I kind of made my own version of it. And then also knowing your audience and the art of coaching. This is how I see it. This is how I see it. If someone is not getting something, it's my fault. Okay? Like you as a coach and as a professional, you need to be able to go, actually, this person is not getting it. I've tried 4 different ways. I need to try another way. And if that doesn't work, I need to try another way. And it might be, you've got to find a reason as to why that's not working and solve that issue. Okay? You've got different coaching styles, different ways of making things work. I'm not going to go over all of them. I can send this slide to you because they'll just be here talking about those. But the main message is kind of like, you try one way, it's not working, try a different way. The other thing is, why is it not working? Is it the fact, did you verbally tell them? Did you show them? Are they not motivated? Are they not interested? If they're not motivated, they're not interested, well, your job is to motivate them. And to make them interested. If they're kids, it's kind of, if you don't want to be here, don't be here, go away. Kids, a lot of time, kids, they want to be there, but if you're not engaging them, they're not going to engage. It's that simple, and I've had that with different kids, and I've had it last week. It's kind of like, them kids are there every week, and that week they weren't engaging as much, and that was probably because I was tired, and I wasn't performing, so they weren't performing. So I kind of had to then take a few breaths and be like, boom, let's change this up, let's play a game. All of a sudden, they were listening. Things like empowering and peer coaching as well work really well. You've got a room full of kids. You don't need to coach them all. Some of them pick up things quickly. Good, awesome, use them. Use those guys, pair up. Right, you're going to help this person, you're going to help this person, I'm going to see how much you know and how well you can coach. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. By the end of it, if he's really good, you've done a great job, and I know you know what you're doing because you've coached him really well. All of a sudden, that kid is now practicing what he knows by coaching the other kid. That other kid respects his peer and wants to learn off his peer, and they're all collaborating. Then they're bonding. they're going to create friendships, they're going to talk to each other, they're going to want to come to the sessions. So it's about creating the right environment as well. And how you do, there's different ways of doing it, but peer coaching is one. Empowering kids is a great one as well. The best one I found with the younger kids for behaviour management is kind of play a game, give them points. So like I get a whiteboard, it's like, okay, I'm going to give you points for everything you do well, or things that get you closer to the goal. So for example, the swimmers, you're going to swim better, and I'm going to take away points for things that are not going to make you swim so well at the race. So if they're messing around, and I'm about to talk and they're talking, point away. You're not listening, you're not going to improve, you're not going to swim well. And it's building that culture. Someone helps someone else without us telling them, oh, well done, I've spotted that, here's a point for your team. And you split them into teams and you give points according to what you see. It could be, God, that's a really good jab, that's a really good, give them a point. Technique is good as well. But reward more the things that you value. That's going to make it easier for your session. I've touched on a few things. I'm not going to go on much longer, but so we said all this. Where do we go from here? How do we then, the next conversation, how do we start implementing these things? How do we make ourselves better? And how do we make the sessions better as a team? And that's the thing, really. It's all well and good talking about these things, but then we need to start also implementing it to grow. And then, you know, the more we learn together, the more we can share things with each other, the more the team grows. And this includes myself, like in terms of thinking back and analysing what can I do better, what haven't I done. So it's the plan delivery process. So yeah, ideas, opinions, questions.
Would we be able to maybe program certain warm-ups or certain drills? So for the youth class, so there's like they said like foam rolling, but like some sort of maybe structure similar like we have to the other classes. Or just certain exercises, movements, so I can work through those things.
There's no reason why you can't steal those animals and start doing those things and just implementing it in there.
We could use them for our stalls as well. We could have like
Yeah.
a
That's what I was
set
thinking.
little. So obviously we now go into like two or two
Yeah.
stalls hopefully soon, and 14, 15, around that age.
Yeah.
So like you do see some kids are like at the front centre, they're ready to like learn and want to be like. We've got quite a wide variety of people, and I realise.
No skill levels like you can. There's no average.
And then you've got other people who they'll turn up like late and they're like a group of lads or such, and they mostly want to do it, but they also don't want to show off in front. Not show off.
They want to do it, but then they do it. They're self-conscious of how
and
they don't want to
stand
try.
back and they're like, you'll tell them one thing and like go half-hearted on it and things like that. So
That's
it's a difficult age, isn't it? Like to get them.
It's a difficult challenge.
Not impossible.
How I've dealt with that in the past was the difficulty there is you might see that one group once. If you see them regularly.
We're working with them on an 8-week program.
Okay, so
for a 6-week program.
So look to develop a relationship with them, and acquire some respect immediately. They need to see you as an authority, and they need to see you as also someone they can kind of relate to. So you've got two ways to go about it. You can try and talk to them and try and put them at ease. If it's a confidence thing, put them at ease in terms of just talking. Nothing to do with boxing. Like just talk to them about whatever. What'd you have for breakfast? Sometimes I'm like, I start conversations so randomly with the kids I coach, just to develop a relationship, just to get them talking to me, so that I can understand a little bit more about them. And the more you talk to them about other things, it's just like a normal like PT session. If you get on with someone, that's going to be more enjoyable for them. You might relate more, they might relate more, you know, and so on. It's the same with the kids. You just just talk to them, just develop that relationship, develop that trust. Like, don't consciously try to get them to like you all the time. But if they like you, it's a lot easier. But equally, don't be afraid to go, go, and like it's kind of try to think back to the teachers in school, the ones that you liked but respected, and are the ones that have control of the room.
Yeah.
And you enjoyed the sessions and you got the most out of the sessions because you liked them. You liked the way they do things, but you also knew not to push the boundary because they were like, so those are the best ones, and that's the same with coaching. You wanna allow them to have fun, but you need to allow them to respect. You need to make sure they respect it as well, because if not, they'll take it too far.
Exploring, basically, kind of exploring.